Talking Reds. It's Neil Atkinson and I'm joined by David Anderson of The Mirror to have a chat about a number of Liverpool-based things. But we'll start off with what is the biggest and saddest story, really, of the day, which is that Ian St. John has passed away, David. It's hard, I think, now because it is so long, and it's worth remembering this, that, time plays tricks on us. It's so long since St. John arrived at Liverpool. But when he does, they're a second division side.
Yeah.
And him and Ron Yates with Shankly are part of, we remember obviously Shankly's role, and he couldn't be more important to the club. Everyone knows that. But what Yates and St. John do when they arrive at Anfield is absolutely enormous.
Yeah, you're right. I was just thinking there about Ian St. John, and you're right. He sort of laid those cornerstones, really. Just thinking back, signed in 1961 from Motherwell. It's laughable, like Neil, when you look back, a record £35,000 for Liverpool back then. And of course, that first season helps him win promotion in 62, which has obviously had been a big thing for Liverpool all those years, languishing in the second division. And that's what Shanks been brought in to do. And St. John was a key part of that. And then not only that, then, but he got 18 that season. Then the first season up, I think, got 19 goals. And then, of course, they helped deliver the title in 1964. And you look at his record, and it's just 1-4. It was about 100 odd goals, about 400 appearances. But those first few seasons when he played him up top, he was doing the business. In that title winning season 64, he got 1-2. And then, of course, they pushed him back to a more sort of midfield withdrawn role, and he didn't score as many, really. But of course, the iconic moment, of course, is the winner, the headed goal at extra time to win the FA Cup in 1965. And for the first time, it's a strange one, that, because obviously, later Liverpool fans, you think, oh, what's the big deal about, winning the FA Cup? It's almost, they're so used to success. But back then, that was such a big moment for Liverpool. He had strived their whole history to win the FA Cup, and here, finally, he helped deliver it.
He did help deliver it. I think the context of that is the homecoming pictures. It's like a European homecoming when you look back now. When they're coming back from Lime Street, they come back up on the train, and St. George's Hall is rammed. There are hundreds of thousands of people on the streets, and that tells you the story. The people tell the story of what it meant when he scored that goal to win Liverpool that FA Cup.
No, you're right. It's one of those moments, like you talk about 77 as well, the first European Cup and stuff. And we've got a bit used to it with like the victory parade in 2019 with the Champions League success. Unfortunately, there wasn't one for the title, because that would have been absolutely massive. But you're right, Neil, that 65 moment, you speak to, like, my father was a season ticket holder since the 50s, and they'd always talk about 65. There'd been the disappointments in 1914, Burnley, and 50 Arsenal. Like, Liverpool had won leagues, had been around, but they just had never won the FA Cup. Everton had won it. Everton, like, let's not forget, back then, Everton, you might argue, were as big, if not slightly bigger, in terms of success. And so to help deliver that first FA Cup was a major, major moment, for St. John. And I think one that he'll be sort of always loved for.
There's a strange thing with him, because he goes on here the rest of his career with Liverpool, as you say, drops back. Shankly hasn't dropped back across the next couple of seasons. Then there's this strange, for people of my age, I'm 40, this strange fact that he delivered football on a Saturday lunchtime to us in a remarkably fun way. But because it's fun, people don't like to link fun with innovative. But it was innovative what Saint and Greavesy was as a show. It wasn't po-faced. It wasn't Jimmy Hill. It wasn't sat upright in chairs. It wasn't even football men arguing. It was a lot of people enjoying the game, looking forward to the game. They'd have a laugh with managers when they got them on. I've just seen a clip a minute ago of them laughing at the way Ferguson was lit in an interview, and with the fact that he dropped a player and they're winding him up about that. And you're thinking, my God, no one had done this before, and not many people have done it since.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you were to sit down in front of a TV producer and say, look, I've got this great idea. These two legends of the game, they're going to sit together. It's going to be a bit of banter. Greavesy's going to be the comics. John will be the straight man. Watch the banter go. They absolutely would love it. And yet, as you say, talk about being ahead of your time. Like, this is what a decade before fantasy football came along in the mid-90s, and Skinner and Badile were trying to reinvent and be funny and stuff. And as you say, it was essential for you. Like, I've had messages from people, and they all talk about, oh, Saint Greaves in the 80s. What a show. And you didn't have to love football to want to watch the Saint Greaves. As you say, it was entertainment, and the way that they did it as well. And it wasn't cruel, because a lot of the time now it's people being lambasted or sort of being pulled apart. Oh, he's rubbish. Almost punditry these days, it's all about sort of taking a machine gun to someone and just, destroying them, really. Whereas they did, it was all sort of good humor. As you say, they got the people on, and they would go along with the jokes as well. as usual, it was great entertainment on a Saturday lunchtime, before the football. He just thinking, I'm just St. John rocking back in his chair, just laughing his head off at some little quip from Greasy. Let's be honest, if Greasy hadn't been the brilliant striker that he was, talk about a career as a stand-up comic. Some of his one-liners were just brilliant, weren't they?
They were. It was all fantastic stuff. But obviously, St. John remains part of the fabric of Liverpool from that point onwards. He's around right the way through. He was still doing events, ambassadorial stuff with the club, available to do media stuff. The work that he does at Radio City for many a year, and I know many at Radio who were at Radio City with him are genuinely upset because he was the first thing that you want was that he was a remarkably solid performer every single week with Ian Snowden. He would be terrific on the radio, always worth listening to. But on top of that, always kind as well. And I think that that's something which, that sort of wit that he had, it very rarely left him. And he would enjoy. I think he enjoyed. I did one thing with him. And I said to him, like, he asked me to do a phone in at Radio City going back years, like 2013. He said, "Do you want to have a go at one?" And I said, "Okay." So I had to, after the match at Anfield, I had to walk up the steps. And Satan was doing the first half of the phone in, and he had to go, and I was going to do the second half of the phone in. So when we passed over, I said, "Ian, I'm going to ask you a question. Just come with me on it." And he said, "Okay." And so the question was, what's the first goal you remember scoring? Not like as a professional, I think it's a really like literally playing in the park, etc. If you think about that was the first goal, and he could remember one which he said the first thing he could remember was one when he was about 8, and he just forced the ball over the line playing for his school team in Scotland. And I thought, well, that's a very Ian St. John goal, isn't it? He just got the ball over the line, he said, and he just went with that, and he could have gone, "Now I'm getting off, I'm doing this, I'm doing that," and he didn't. He said, "Oh," and he had 5 minutes with me where we talked about this, and he was just really, really good, just really open to doing something interesting.
Yeah, like it's just what you say there, Neil sort of sums up what you see. He forced the ball over the line. If you sort of think of his personality as a footballer as well, he was so sort of tigerish, that little sort of Terry whipping around, that sort of desire to go in where it hurt and sort of get the goals and get the end of things. Even though he's only 5'7", you'd sort of think, very physical age back then, but he could sort of do it really. And funny, if I was just thinking, I remember in the famous 87-88 season, I still lived back home, and the only game I saw that season. Here's a question for you. The only game I saw that season, the 87-88 season. Now, let's think. Liverpool have gone 29 games unbeaten. There's a Merseyside derby. My dad's got tickets for the Merseyside derby at Goodison. Over we go from Northern Ireland to watch this one game. And, of course, we all know what happens and nearly destroyed. And yet that day, I remember meeting Ian St. John. He was doing the commentary and the gantry up at Goodison and going along, and, of course, being a bit too embarrassed to sort of say too much, but, got his autograph, posed for a picture with us and all that. And he's just quality, because of course they come from that generation where they were still normal people. We hadn't created the superstars yet that then went and lived on planet, glory, whatever, and they didn't have time for ordinary people. They were too sort of busy, sort of looking at themselves, and he sort of never lost that sort of common touch as well, really, despite all the success.
Absolutely. So Ian St. John passed away. There'll be more stuff on the Anfield Wrap around all of that, but there'll be stuff everywhere, and do take it all in. And as I say, Dave Downey, Steve Hoddesall, follow those guys on Twitter, talking about the time they spent with Ian St. John towards his later years. All very interesting stuff, and all very kind and generous as well. I want to talk a little bit. It was interesting that Jamie Carragher picked it up on Monday Night Football, which I sort of didn't want him to, David, in that I quite liked it. I mean, like Chelsea analysts aren't looking at the tape or any other side that you care to mention. But Liverpool, it's really interesting to me. Liverpool's team dropped for the game against Sheffield United, and it looks like more of the same. And then as the game develops, it becomes clearer that Liverpool are doing things just a little bit differently. And, it's quite interesting, actually, to talk about it in the context of St. John and dropping deeper. Mane more central, Firmino a little bit deeper. I mean, the chances still dropped to him, but at least he got one in the end. Firmino a little bit deeper, Jones a little bit higher, Robertson right the way out wide, Arnold right the way back. Liverpool, it was different. Do you think firstly, do you think it was the plan for the season as a whole with Jurgen Klopp, with the new signings? Do you think it will now be the plan, or do you think it's a bit of a one-off because they were playing Sheffield United?
I think it's maybe there's a little bit of everything in there. I think it was interesting. We were just chatting among ourselves before. We just said, look, they got to change a little bit, because we're just thinking back to the sort of the derby where, of course, you're going through this whole thing about playing the Fabinho with Henderson as centre half, and we're talking about the problem that causes. Not just is that they are they were doing the job well, but the point is we know that their best position is protecting that defence. And of course, when you take those two away, there was no protection for the defence. And although a lot of the focus was on, the defence isn't good enough, we've got injuries, and therefore, that's not good. But there was no protection. And you just thought, well, now what we're going to do, because we've lost both of them. So how is he going to come around this? And I thought it was good because he said, look, do you know what? I've got Phillips and we've got Kabak, the two centre halves. Let's play the two centre halves in the centre half role. Let's play the two guys either side. I mean, you could see we said to Trent before, but Trent, just hang back a little bit. Just keep it. And you're right. We were almost. It was like a 3-4-3 at times, wasn't it? Where he would sit back, and you could see Robertson. Meanwhile, was playing like an auxiliary left winger. He was bombing down. Trent was hanging deep. Trent was finding him with the crossfield balls, which is quite nice. And it just gives that little bit more solidity. And then, of course, you had Wijnaldum, who was sort of delegated with the right. You sit deep and just protect these guys, just to give them that little bit of protection until you sort of saw, well, really, with the way Sheffield United play, it was just humping it to McBurney, so there wasn't really that great danger. And then you could go forward, as you say, sort of Salah was sort of like the man through the middle. Curtis Jones is having more freedom to push forward as well. And I really liked it because there's obviously been a problem for the last few weeks, and he was almost trying to, well, I'm going to play this way, where although, as you say, he wasn't chucking out the 4-3-3, he sort of tweaked it really, in possession, out of possession. And I liked it. Now, of course, it's only Sheffield United, and as we know, they're going down and have all sorts of problems. But I think it was certainly encouraging. And there was, as you say, with the way they played, and I like that performance and the way they changed around.
I wonder, one of the things about it is it makes it easy for me. So I think Thiago and Wijnaldum both sat together a little deeper. It's easier to imagine how, for instance, Keita and Milner can both do a bit of that as and when they get back fit. You've got the idea maybe of Keita being able to do a bit of what Jones was doing if he'd got the alternative there. And then you still keep going along the line. Jota could come in for any of the front three in that shape. Either you move the personnel around a little bit, but you can see that, or even come in for Jones. So you could have Jota in there as well and have him just be a fourth attacker. I think he's, as I say, I do wonder whether or not it was always something that they wanted to do this season, but between injuries and time on the training ground, it might be difficult. The other thing for me as well, David, which I think has been missed so far, is Sheffield United play three at the back, Chelsea play three at the back, Fulham at the toss of a coin if they play three at the back against Liverpool. Leipzig will play three at the back, and Wolves play three at the back. So the other thing I wonder is if he's probably concerned that there's a lot of sides coming to Anfield and playing either a bit of a hybrid back four, back five, or just playing a back five against Liverpool. So he's probably thought, well, if I can get five of them with Robertson being one, all right up in attacking areas, we can play some 1v1, and this is how we'll do it. So I think that might be in his thinking as well, is I keep coming up against these back five, so what's our solution? Yeah,
no, I think you're definitely right, because the 4-3-3 worked brilliantly. As you said, teams couldn't cope with the high press either. But as you said, I just think it's just a great way of dealing with the current situation, because we all know that Liverpool's energy levels have dropped this season. They're not pressing as much as they were or as high. And we all know that, Klopp didn't have his, we know all the reasons. He didn't have his proper pre-season. He wasn't able to get the work into at the start of the season that usually would see the benefit of. Of course, they've had all their injuries. They've been, was it 18 different centre-half pairings and stuff like that. But I think what I like about it, and significant as well, they had a full week to prepare for that Sheffield United game. And let's be honest, Sheffield United away, what a perfect game. When you do want to try something out and work on something. You can see, I think, that 4 good training sessions or something says where they worked with those two at centre half with that sort of formation, saying, right, lads, this is what we're going to do. It wasn't one of these things that's sort of done on the hoof. And it was encouraging to see, because I just felt as if for the last few defeats, it's almost been a bit like Groundhog Day, where they were rolling out, playing the same way. Teams had sussed them, like Everton, for example. They knew to sort of, press them high, win the ball back, get the early goal, sit back and defend. You know what they're going to do. We'll just play with 5 at the back, as you were rightly saying. They're not going to break us down. We know they don't really have that energy or high press anymore. So it's great to sort of see that they've gone away, thought about it, so do you know what? Let's try this. Let's just tweak it a little bit. And say, nobody's saying chuck it all out and play 4-4-2 or something like that. You're just tweaking what's good, just to make it that little bit better.
Last little thing on that is the performance of Jones, who I thought it's interesting his arc this season. If he does become more of an attacking midfielder, it'll almost be the complete opposite of what I would have expected. I expect him to become an all-round midfielder for Liverpool, a man to solve a problem, not dissimilar to the way they've used firstly Lallana when he came in for Klopp, what Wijnaldum's become possibly a little bit. That's what I think they see Jones. But he's been so controlled, so mature earlier in the season. It was almost nice to see him be a bit rambunctious, to take a few more risks, to just run forward a little bit more. I think, the idea that he was in the penalty area, not just for when he scores, but 5 or 6 times. That's what you want to see from him. He scored so many goals at youth level. Yeah,
and what it was great, you could see they've obviously given him this extra responsibility. As you say, Curtis, you can push forward, you can do it. And like one of the issues Liverpool have had are goals from midfield. And Oxlade-Chamberlain came in like he was doing it for a bit and kind of could get one or two, but it sort of dried up a little bit. And of course, you know, in the current problems, then that puts all the onus on the front three. And then we know that Firmino really doesn't score a lot. You could see again on Sunday's finishing was maybe a little bit erratic. Again, that puts the pressure then on Mane and Salah again. So it's wonderful if you can then lighten their load a little bit and say, well, look, here's a guy in Curtis Jones who will pop up and score a couple of goals from midfield and just take that sort of pressure off a little bit. And no, I think it was good to see. And yet again, another sort of, you know, milestone in his development, really. You know, you can see the confidence growing there. As you see, he's changed from being someone who was on the bench, playing the cup games, obviously remember the goal against Everton, to someone who's now, no, he's in that team of merit.
He's a first team player.
Yeah, he's keeping Kite out, for example. Okay, he's just coming back from injury, but, you know, no, Jones is in there and merit, deserves it.
With that Chelsea game then, just beginning to think about it, it's one of the things that I think this Liverpool team struggled with, David, is I think the Leicester game is a really good example of it, is where the priority is. So since, let's say, Christmas, even before, let's say, the start of the 18-19 season, the priority has been win every game. Like, if you're not winning every game, you're not where you need to be because we're trying to win this league. So, and to win the league, you've got to win every game against Manchester City. I think that they've struggled a little bit, Liverpool, or maybe we've struggled as Liverpool supporters as well at times to say, listen, there's no, apart from Manchester City, no other team in the country is doing better than 2 points a game. It's all right to draw 1 or 2. It's all right. You know, the onus isn't there to win every week. And I think it's really important on Thursday that they don't lose.
Yeah.
And normally any home game for Liverpool's, they've got to win. And this is the first time in year. But for me, Thursday is a very, very big, just don't lose. If you don't lose, you'll keep in touch. Then it's Fulham, then it's Wolves. There's a big break. More players hopefully get back fit. All of that sort of stuff. It is just hang on in there. And if you can be, you know, within striking distance of 4th with 6 games to go, that's when you've got to go on a winning run.
Neil, I think that's a very good point, because you're right. If okay, nobody wants to be in a position Liverpool are fighting for 4th as opposed to fighting for title. Because you see the flip side of that is you're not up against this winning machine. Whereas we saw it 2 seasons ago, whether the pressure was on Liverpool from Christmas, that time after beating Arsenal to open up that gap. It's like, you've got to win every game, game. And it was relentless. And draws, like, you know, going away to Goodison and drawing 0-0, or going away to Old Trafford and drawing 0-0, were almost like defeats. It was awful. Yeah. Whereas now, as you say, well, hold on a minute. Well, now what you're competing against now, you're competing against the Leicester team. And we know they're wildly inconsistent. So they'll lose 3 in a row. They've already done that this season. They lost, you know, to Arsenal. You think, that's a bit of a surprise. West Ham, again, doing really well, but are they really a top 4 side? I don't think so. Chelsea, again, have come back well under Tuchel, but look at them under Lampard. They were all over the shop. So again, as you say, they're all inconsistent. It's as long as you're not, as you say, like, okay, Liverpool lost the 4 games, that was really bad, but it's incredible to think that they've just won 1, and yet they're back all on their coattails again. So you're right. It's a time for cool heads and perspective to say, do you know what? It's almost like, right, the next 5 games, win 3, draw 2, that would be fine. Perfectly good. And even
if they'd drawn against Leicester right now, I think they'd be 2 points behind Leicester. And I think that's something that, you know, if you are the manager, it's maybe worth pointing out. For me, I think that against Leicester, it's so frustrating to think back on it. Yes, it's a hugely controversial goal to concede, but Liverpool kick off like men possessed to right what's just gone wrong. Yeah. Whereas it would have been perfectly fine for them just to keep the ball for 5 minutes and say, we're happy with 1-1, lads. You've got to come out to us. And if we can nick 1, we're delighted, but we'll take 1-1. And I think that's an important lesson before Chelsea, where Chelsea have been so parsimonious. They're not creating very much, but they're not allowing very much to be created against them. That Liverpool, I think patience will be a virtue on Thursday. And if it just all finishes 0-0, Man United have been doing it all season. If it just finishes 0-0, you just shrug your shoulders, you shake hands at the end of it, and you think, right now we've got to beat Fulham. And I think that's what Liverpool need to have a bit of. But in the meantime, you've got Salah, you've got Mane, you've got Firmino, you've got Jones. If it's 0-0 with 10 to go, you could create something and you can make it 1.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. As you say, it's not one of those games. Normally, you'd be looking at it, right, this is it. It's at Anfield. This is a great chance. Start fast, really high tempo. Go out and sort of give it to them, and let's see if we can get a couple of early goals and withstand. As you say, well, hold on a minute. You know, why do you want to all go home and get picked off by Chelsea, who've got their confidence back under Tuchel and will be organised and will come with a game plan, almost expecting Liverpool to do that, knowing they can maybe sort of, you know, turn the ball over, you know, maybe hit them on the break or a set piece or something. So as you say, let's just play our way into the game. Now, Jota could be back as well, so you say there could be options
another
off the bench.
Yeah,
and as you say, it's almost like almost like a boxing match, really, as you say. Feel your way through the first few rounds. Keep yourself in contention. And then we'll talk about the championship rounds. Then go for it maybe towards the end if whatever needs to be done. Really, and I think you make a very good point. I think that's almost a philosophy for the rest of this campaign. There's still 13 games to go. There's 39 points here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of games. You keep sort of almost with the panic that sort of engulfed us over the last few weeks. It's almost, oh my God, this is the end of the world. It's all disaster and doom. And then, well, hold on a minute. Look at the weekend we've just had, for example. City go and beat West Ham, which they're doing to everybody. So West Ham have lost. Leicester surprisingly lose at Arsenal. As you say, Chelsea and United do the no-score bore because United just aren't good enough. So there's 2 points dropped for each of those sides. And okay, Everton won last night, but you're looking around all of a sudden, wow, it's all back there. And like really, if as you see, with the fixture coming up after Chelsea, Liverpool really could be back in the top 4 within another. Well, they could be in the top 4 if they win on Thursday night. But with everybody playing the same number of games, that could happen within 3 or 4 matches.
It could indeed. Listen, thank you very much to David. Everything you need on the Anfield Wrap for that Chelsea game, looking back at Sheffield United and, of course, around Ian St John as well. TheAnfieldWrap.com/subscribe and download the app. We'll see you later.